Early settlements, prehistory, Bronze Age. Human life along the Vistula River began thousands of years ago. The river served as both a lifeline and a highway, offering fertile banks for farming, rich hunting grounds, and a natural route for the exchange of goods and ideas. Archaeologists have uncovered Stone Age tools and pottery that show steady technological progress. By the late Bronze Age, the Lycian culture, c. 1300 to 500 BCE, left behind impressive traces. Their fortified settlements, protected by earthworks and raised platforms, reveal a society with organization and permanence. Burial customs were equally striking. Cremated remains were placed in urns and arranged in vast cemeteries containing hundreds of graves, evidence of continuity over generations. Bronze jewelry, weapons, and tools highlight their craftsmanship and daily life. Cultural crossroads, Iron Age, Early Middle Ages. Over the centuries, waves of Celtic and Germanic groups passed through, leaving new weapons, ornaments, and tools. By the early medieval period, Slavic tribes dominated the region. They built fortified strongholds known as gradzi, often near rivers and forests, and practiced nature-based religions with idols and rituals tied to fertility, harvest, and the sun. Poland's location at the crossroads of Europe exposed it to raids and cultural exchange alike. Vikings sailed inland rivers, while Germanic neighbors pressed from the west. Despite turbulence, these interactions helped lay the foundations for a shared identity based on language, land, and tradition. The baptism of Poland, 966. The turning point came in 966, when Duke Mieszko I, ruler of the Poland tribe, accepted Christianity. His decision was strategic as much as spiritual. By marrying the Christian princess Dobrowa of Bohemia, Mieszko secured legitimacy and alliances within Latin Christendom. The baptism, likely held in a modest wooden church at Poznan or Gniezno, marked the birth of the Polish state. It replaced fragmented tribal beliefs with a unified religious framework and introduced Latin literacy, law, and diplomacy. Recognition by the Holy Roman Empire gave Mieszko's realm security against conquest, while Christianity allowed Poland to engage as an equal player in European politics. The Piast dynasty, 10th to 14th centuries. Poland's first ruling family, the Piasts, established the state's foundations. Mieszko's son, Boleslaw I the Brave, secured Poland's first royal crown in 1025, placing it among Europe's recognized kingdoms. He expanded the realm through warfare and diplomacy, capturing Kiev's Golden Gate as a symbol of power and prestige. Yet succession disputes weakened the dynasty. Lands were divided among heirs, fragmenting the kingdom into rival duchies by the 12th century. Despite political decline, Poland's towns grew, trade routes connected it to the Baltic and southern Europe, and monasteries spread culture and learning. The Piasts left behind both triumphs and fractures, but also a framework for future unification. Rise of Krakow, 11th to 14th centuries. In 1038, the royal court moved to Krakow, making it Poland's political and symbolic heart. Wawel Hill, with its fortified castle and cathedral, became the center of power, where kings were crowned and buried. Krakow thrived as a hub of trade, linking Western Europe with the East. In 1257, the city gained Magdeburg rights, granting self-governance and boosting commerce. Its carefully planned grid of streets and vast market square reflected its growing prosperity. By the 14th century, King Casimir III the Great established the University of Krakow, 1364, one of Europe's oldest, ensuring Poland's place in the intellectual life of the continent. Legends also grew here, including the tale of the Wawel Dragon, a mythical symbol of Krakow's resilience. The Jagiellonian Golden Age, 1386 to 1572. Poland's fortunes rose further with the Jagiellonian dynasty, founded in 1386 when Queen Jadwiga of Poland married Jogaila, Grand Duke of Lithuania, who converted to Christianity and became King the Ladislaw II Jagiello. This union created one of Europe's largest states, stretching from the Baltic to the Black Sea. The alliance proved powerful, defeating the Teutonic Knights at the Battle of Grunwald, 1410, and securing Poland's borders. Prosperity flowed from the grain trade, with wheat and rye shipped down the Vistula to Gdansk, one of Europe's busiest ports. Culturally, the Jagiellonian era was a Renaissance golden age. Italian architects reshaped Krakow's Wawel Castle. Scholars filled the university, and figures like Nicholas Copernicus, educated in Krakow, revolutionized science with his heliocentric theory. Diplomacy through royal marriages extended the dynasty's reach into Hungary and Bohemia, ensuring nearly 2 centuries of stability. A republic of nobles, 16th century. By the 1500s, Poland developed a unique political system, the nobles' Commonwealth, Rex Pospolita. Here, the Szlachta, a large noble class making up about 10% of society, held extraordinary rights under the principle of golden liberty. Kings were elected by the nobility, and their powers were limited by the same parliament. Nobles could freely practice religion, vote on laws, and even legally rebel if liberties were threatened. While this system prevented tyranny, it also made unity fragile, leaving Poland vulnerable to foreign interference. Religious tolerance and diversity, 16th to 17th centuries. At a time when Europe was torn by the Reformation, Poland stood out for religious tolerance. Lutherans, Calvinists, Orthodox Christians, Jews, and even Muslim Tatars coexisted within the Commonwealth. The Warsaw Confederation of 1573 formally guaranteed freedom of worship, making Poland one of the few states to embrace diversity as law. This openness enriched its cities. Italians, Armenians, Germans, and Tatars added to Poland's cultural mosaic, while Jewish communities, welcomed after expulsions from the West, flourished with schools, councils, and yeshivas, making Poland the heart of Jewish life in Europe. Although conflicts arose, Poland largely avoided the destructive religious wars that devastated other kingdoms. Diversity became not a weakness, but a defining strength of the Commonwealth. Wars with neighbors, 1600s. How could a kingdom famed for its battlefield triumphs find its strength crumbling in the wake of victory? In the 1600s, the Polish-Lithuanian Commonwealth was locked in near-constant wars with Europe's fiercest powers. Sweden to the north, Russia to the east, and the Ottoman Empire pressing from the south. On paper, these wars produced brilliant campaigns, battles that showcased unmatched skill and courage. Yet, each triumph carried hidden costs: a shattered economy, depopulated countryside, and a political system stretched to its breaking point. The wars with Sweden revealed this contradiction most clearly. During the Deluge, 1655 to 1660, Swedish armies swept across Poland, capturing cities and looting treasures. Though the Commonwealth eventually drove them out, the victory came at immense cost. Towns burned, trade collapsed, and villages were left in ruins. Recovery proved slow, with no centralized system to rebuild what had been destroyed. To the east, conflicts with Russia dragged on for decades. Initial campaigns to secure borderlands soon spiraled into prolonged wars that demanded endless manpower and treasure. Victories provided short-term gains, but Russia's sheer size and vast resources ensured that every success bled the Commonwealth further. Local communities bore the brunt, forced to house soldiers and endure crushing taxation. The southern frontier brought clashes with the Ottoman Empire. Poland's armies often stood as defenders of Christian Europe, most famously in 1683 at Vienna, where the winged hussars charged down the hillside and turned the tide against Ottoman forces. The image of armored riders with great wings became a legend across Europe. Yet the glory masked grim reality. Campaigns drained the treasury, and thousands of families mourned fathers and sons lost to war. The paradox was unmistakable. Victory was possible, even frequent, but each triumph weakened the state more than defeat. The Commonwealth's political order, built on noble liberty, made it impossible for the king to mobilize resources consistently. Decline of the Commonwealth, 17th to 18th centuries. By the late 1600s, the Commonwealth, once dominant in Central and Eastern Europe, was unraveling. Endless warfare drained its people and treasury, leaving the state unable to sustain the strength of earlier centuries. At the heart of its decline was the liberum veto. In principle, it embodied equality. Any single noble could veto legislation in parliament. In practice, it paralyzed government. A single objection could dissolve an entire session, making reform, taxation, or military organization nearly impossible. Worse, foreign powers learned to exploit this flaw. Russia, Prussia, and Austria bribed nobles to block reforms, ensuring Poland remained weak. Meanwhile, powerful magnate families built their own private armies and ruled lands like independent fiefdoms. The elected monarchy, once prestigious, became largely symbolic, bound by restrictions imposed by the nobility. The Commonwealth became less a unified state than a patchwork of competing interests, ripe for manipulation by its neighbors. The dysfunction reached absurd extremes. One noble reportedly dissolved parliament simply because he wanted to go home for dinner. Such stories revealed how fragile governance had become. Millions were held hostage to the whims of a few. As central authority crumbled, neighbors tightened their grip. Sweden and later Prussia pressed from the north. Russia advanced from the east, and Austria eyed the south. With bribes and political interference, they kept the Commonwealth paralyzed without firing a shot. By the early 18th century, the once great state existed more as a prize to be divided than a power in its own right. The first partition, 1772. The breaking point came in 1772. Unable to reform itself and weakened by endless political deadlock, the Commonwealth became an easy target. Russia, Prussia, and Austria, normally rivals, coordinated to divide its territory in what became the first partition of Poland. For the first time in European diplomacy, three states dismantled a sovereign country under the guise of stability. Poland lost around 30% of its land and people, fertile farmlands, wealthy towns, and critical trade routes. Prussia seized the most productive regions. Austria took resource-rich Galicia, and Russia expanded its eastern influence. The blow was not just territorial but symbolic. The Commonwealth was shrinking into irrelevance. Poland erased, 1795. In 1791, Poland attempted one last rebirth through the Constitution of May 3, Europe's first modern constitution. It sought to strengthen the monarchy, curtail the veto, and modernize the state. But reform was too late and too threatening to its neighbors. Russia and Prussia staged the Second Partition, 1793, cutting away more territory. 2 years later, after a final failed uprising, Austria joined them in the Third Partition, 1795. The Commonwealth vanished. Once one of Europe's largest states, Poland was erased from the map. The last king, Stanislaw August Poniatowski, abdicated under foreign pressure and died in exile, his fate mirroring that of his kingdom. Humiliated, dependent, and silenced. Yet Poland's identity endured. Families spoke Polish in their homes, schools secretly taught its history, and writers kept the dream alive. Romantic poets like Adam Mickiewicz and Juliusz Slowacki, and composers like Frédéric Chopin, turned national trauma into cultural defiance. Their works became acts of resistance, carrying Poland's voice across Europe. A nation without a state, 19th century. After the failed uprisings of the 19th century, Poland remained erased from the map, divided among Russia, Prussia, and Austria. Each empire imposed its own system of control, but all shared the goal of weakening Polish identity and suppressing nationalism. Everyday life for former citizens of the Commonwealth depended on which partition they lived under. In Russian-controlled lands, Russification dominated. Polish was banned from schools, replaced by Russian, while Catholic institutions were restricted, monasteries closed, and local symbols replaced with imperial ones. Polish culture survived in private spaces, within families, secret lessons, and religious traditions. In Prussian Poland, Germanization targeted both education and the economy. Children were forced to learn in German, sometimes punished for using Polish. Publishing in Polish became difficult, while land reforms favored German settlers. Yet this pressure inspired communities to defend their culture through underground schools and organizations. World War I and Rebirth, 1914 to 1918. When the First World War erupted, Poles saw a chance for freedom after more than a century of partitions. Millions were conscripted into the Russian, German, and Austrian armies, sometimes fighting each other on opposing sides. Poland itself became a bloody battlefield as villages were destroyed and families displaced. Amid the chaos, leaders positioned themselves for the future. Józef Pilsudski formed the Polish legions under Austrian command, intending to use them later for independence. Others, like Roman Dmowski, placed hopes in Russia and the Western Allies. Despite rival strategies, all aimed at restoring a free Poland. By 1917, the Russian Revolution weakened one occupying empire, while Germany and Austria-Hungary collapsed by 1918. On November 11, 1918, Pilsudski returned to Warsaw and assumed command. That same day, the armistice ending World War I was signed. Poland was reborn after 123 years of absence. The Interwar Republic, 1918 to 1939. The Second Polish Republic faced immense challenges. State institutions, infrastructure, and currency had to be built from scratch. Regions once ruled by different empires carried distinct laws, schools, and systems that needed unification. Externally, Poland fought wars to secure its borders, most decisively against Soviet Russia in 1920. The miracle on the Vistula saved the republic from collapse, and the 1921 Treaty of Riga fixed its frontiers. Internally, politics were unstable, with coalition governments shifting frequently. In 1926, Pilsudski staged a coup, establishing a semi-authoritarian system where elections continued but power rested largely in his hands. Invasion and occupation, 1939. On September 1, 1939, Germany invaded Poland, launching World War II. Tanks, aircraft, and naval forces struck rapidly, overwhelming defenses. Despite fierce resistance, such as the defense of Westerplatte and legendary cavalry charges, the Polish army was outmatched. On September 17th, the Soviet Union invaded from the east under a secret pact with Germany, sealing Poland's defeat. The government fled into exile, but resistance began at home. Both occupiers targeted Polish identity, executing intellectuals, deporting families, and banning higher education. Yet secret schools, underground presses, and resistance networks kept national spirit alive. Polish cryptologists had even cracked key parts of Germany's Enigma code before the war, aiding Allied intelligence. A crucial but often overlooked contribution. The Holocaust and resistance, 1939 to 1945. Occupied Poland became the epicenter of the Nazi genocide. Camps such as Auschwitz, Treblinka, and Sobibor were built for mass killing, where millions, Jews, Poles, Roma, Soviet POWs, and others, were murdered. Ghettos confined Jewish populations in brutal conditions, slowly starving them before deportation. Despite the terror, resistance persisted. The Home Army, Armia Krajowa, sabotaged rail lines, spread underground newspapers, and passed intelligence to the Allies. Secret schools taught banned subjects. Jewish resistance rose within ghettos, most famously in the Warsaw Ghetto Uprising of 1943, when fighters held out nearly a month against overwhelming German forces. In 1944, the Warsaw Uprising saw 63 days of urban warfare before being crushed, leaving the city in ruins. Though defeated, these acts proved that Polish identity and defiance survived even amidst annihilation. Communist Poland, 1945-1980s. After World War II, Poland did not regain true independence. Instead, it became the Polish People's Republic, a Soviet satellite state. Borders shifted westward. Eastern lands went to the USSR, while Poland gained former German territories. Millions were displaced in forced resettlements. The communist regime imposed censorship, surveillance, and a planned economy. Heavy industry was prioritized, while consumer goods were scarce. Strikes and protests broke out, first in Poznan in 1956, then across the 1970s as shortages deepened. Daily life meant ration cards, long queues, and limited freedoms. Yet underground presses, Catholic traditions, and cultural networks kept independent thought alive. Religion grew especially important after 1978, when Cardinal Karol Wojtyla of Krakow became Pope John Paul II, inspiring Poles with a sense of spiritual and national solidarity. Solidarity and the fall of communism, 1980 to 1989. In 1980, workers at the Lenin shipyard in Gdansk went on strike, demanding better conditions. Led by Lech Walesa, they formed the independent Union Solidarity, Solidarnosc. Within months, millions joined, making it the largest movement in Eastern Europe outside communist control. The regime responded with martial law in 1981, curfews, tanks in the streets, censorship, and arrests. But solidarity went underground, kept alive through secret meetings and underground newspapers. By the mid-1980s, economic decline worsened, and Soviet reforms under Mikhail Gorbachev reduced the threat of intervention. Facing mounting pressure, Poland's communist government opened negotiations. The Round Table Talks of 1989 led to semi-free elections. Solidarity's overwhelming victory ended 4 decades of communist rule and sparked democratic revolutions across Eastern Europe. A New Poland, 1990, present. The 1990s brought democracy, a free press, and open markets, but also hardship as subsidies disappeared and industry struggled. Inflation rose, unemployment spread, and inequality deepened. Yet new opportunities emerged, especially for younger generations eager for modernization. Poland's security was transformed when it joined NATO in 1999 and the European Union in 2004. EU membership reshaped infrastructure, trade, and education, while opening borders for work and study abroad. Cities like Warsaw and Krakow became modern hubs of business, culture, and technology. The economy grew steadily, even avoiding recession during the 2008 global crisis. Yet debates continue over the pace of reforms, relations with the EU, and the meaning of sovereignty. As throughout history, Poland balances integration with its strong sense of independence. A New Poland, 1990, present. The 1990s brought democracy, a free press, and open markets, but also hardship as subsidies disappeared and industry struggled. Inflation rose, unemployment spread, and inequality deepened. Yet new opportunities emerged, especially for younger generations eager for modernization. Poland's security was transformed when it joined NATO in 1999 and the European Union in 2004. EU membership reshaped infrastructure, trade, and education, while opening borders for work and study abroad. Cities like Warsaw and Krakow became modern hubs of business, culture, and technology. The economy grew steadily, even avoiding recession during the 2008 global crisis. Yet debates continue over the pace of reforms, relations with the EU, and the meaning of sovereignty. As throughout history, Poland balances integration with its strong sense of independence.